Thank you so much. So, nanotechnology, the future of nanotechnology. You may already be familiar, some of you, with the present of nanotechnology. We're going to go way out, okay? We're going to take a trip into the future today. Uh-oh. Now I have to learn how to use this. Uh-oh. Help me out here, AV. No. All right, while we wait for someone to come help with the AV. Yeah. Oh, it turns out it does matter which way you point it, which is not what I was told. Okay, we're good, thank you. So, how many of you have ever written software? A lot of software people. So, the goal, the long-term goal of nanotechnology is to bring the control to physical matter, atoms and molecules, that we currently have with bits. In other words, when you write software, you worry about, will the code do what I want it to do? You don't worry about, gee, will the software be translated correctly into ones and zeros on the chip? That part we have down. That happens pretty well. The problems come at the software level, and that's where we do our design now. When you do software, you don't have to think too much about what's happening on the chip, at the chip level. So when we say digital style control, we want to make the physical world as malleable as software. Now, some of you who write software are going to think, oh my God, that means that we're going to have bugs in the physical world. That's right, that's how it's going to go. So the goal is to have super fine-grained, detailed control of the same type we have with information. So why aren't we there already? Well, it turns out atoms are harder to manipulate than bits. Number one, there's a lot more different kinds of them. Remember high school chemistry? There's a whole bunch of them. And they have very clear rules about how they get connected, unlike bits, where you just string them in any order you want. The bits, once you get them on the chip, they generally, unless they're being hit by radiation, they'll stay where you put them. Whereas atoms and molecules, as we know, they react. They move around with heat, and they also interchange with each other and react. So it's another challenge that makes it harder than computers. So, do we have a choice about this? Not really. We are physically made of atoms and molecules. If we want to be truly healthy, we have to get the quality of control that we have with software with physical matter. So what would this actually look like? Some of you here have been around long enough that you've actually seen a major technological revolution from the days of the giant mainframe computers, as the computers gradually became smaller and smaller, and the software, of course, became bigger and bigger, until now, basically, what we used to call a supercomputer, you're all carrying in your pockets now. That's really, it's a computer by the original definition. It's a supercomputer, and you're carrying one right now. So, and then in parallel, we've had the revolution of software from the old days of punch cards all the way to now, where many of you know the state of the art of software. It's impressive today. So this is what a technological revolution looks like, and it can come relatively quickly. So we're going to try to imagine what that would look like in nanotechnology. So that one took about 40 years to make major progress. Nanotech's already been going for a while, so let's assume we're 10 years in. Let's try to go 30 years out. I don't think anyone, anywhere, in the early days was successful at projecting where the computer revolution was going. There were a few visionaries. Some of you look like you might have even have known some of them, like Doug Engelbart and Ted Nelson, people like that, who had some idea of where all this was going. I see a smile. But most people did not. So let's try to figure out, what would this future look like? Now, we can't, some of you, if you know chemistry, you look at that and go, I have no idea how you would make that. And that's true. Today, with today's chemistry, We have no idea how we would make this. This is a bearing. It's a mechanical part. It's the kind of thing you have in your cars. This one is made, it's a hydrocarbon, which means hydrogen and carbon. So the inner part would turn with respect to the outer part. The point here is this is the kind of structure, it looks kind of mechanical, right? It looks kind of like a machine part. Well, that's what it is. It's a machine part down at the scale of, you can see the individual atoms. Important point for those of you who are not so technical, this is not something that's been built today. This is a design, okay? It does, however, follow all the rules of chemistry. In other words, if we can figure out how to build it, it will work. These things can exist. The challenge is, how would you ever build something like this? Here's another one out of NASA Ames. These are gears, and they are made out of fullerenes, which is named after Buckminster Fuller, one of our heroes in technology. So these are mechanical devices down at the scale of being able, in this design, you can see the individual atoms. So, we're going to take a look at one of these designed processes. This is the first stage. Look at the lower molecule and look at that white atom on the left. So we're going to be removing that and putting up a new part on there. So this big piece is the toolkit. It's come in. Now watch that. Okay, you saw how that little white one jumped? That's been extracted. Now this pulls away. A new one comes in. Now, what we're doing is we're building this part at the bottom. So watch that the black with the two whites that are at the bottom there, that's a carbon with two hydrogens. It's going to be transferring over. There it goes. The new bottom was found. Now this tool piece that brought it in has to extract itself. It will pull up now, watch. It's breaking that bond. See, it's mechanically breaking it. And there, it's broken. And then it's going to pull away. Now we have a problem. That thing we just put on there isn't finished. It's got to be finished off. It's not complete. So we're going to have to bring in something else. Okay. You see, we need another white one. We need another hydrogen to finish that carbon. Here we go. There we go. It made the jump. And that pulls away. So what we had originally was a hydrogen. Now we have a carbon with 3 hydrogens. So the point is, it's sort of a combination of chemistry and robotics, right? It was kind of like a robot arm that came in with very good precision and did some chemical reactions in a very targeted way. So if you could do this, which I think it's coming, there's a very secretive startup that I know that's working hard on it, and many people are working hard on it in more public ways. Let's say you were able to do this kind of thing. What kind of tools could you build? What we would want to do is start with a set of tools. The first thing you do is make another set of tools so you get some parallelism. One problem with working at this scale is just doing it one time gets you really nothing. You need to do something many, many times in order to actually build something of any size. You need to recharge the tools, which is adding new components onto them so that they can go in and carry out an activity, with the goal of eventually making nanorobotic devices. These are complex, atomically precise products. So, we looked at a bearing. Here's a universal joint. You have these in your cars. Again, this is made of hydrocarbons. Remember, these are designs. We can't build these yet. Here's a universal joint. Instead of just hydrocarbons, it's got oxygen and nitrogen terminating the surface. Now, one thing you want to be able to do is sort molecules out of the atmosphere. So here's a quick animation that pulls the polyion, which is carbon, pulls out. There's a carbon dioxide. Now a surface slides to close it off. The whole thing moves, and then you let go of the carbon dioxide. The point here is this structure is so small and so precisely designed that even a single carbon dioxide molecule can, once it through the normal vibrations moves into a place, it can be held, moved, and let go. So you want to be able to control even down at that level. So this is another design. This is for a molecular filter. Here's a planetary gear. I believe you also have these in your cars. This is a cutaway view. You're seeing the inside of it. You see how complex it is. The point here is that whatever we have in the mechanical world today at the macro scale, in principle, you could build down at the nanoscale, down at the molecular scale, with every atom and molecule in a designed location. So now we're going to do that 30-year jump and say, let's suppose that you can do this successfully. What would it mean for some products we care about? What do we care about? Well, we care about computers, we care about space, and we all care about health, for sure. So when you do computing, one thing you care about is energy efficiency. So here are some numbers that have been run. If you could make computers at the molecular scale like this, how do they compare to today's supercomputers? The blue line here is a Chinese supercomputer, one of the best in the world. It was, when this slide was prepared, it was the best. And the yellow line shows you a molecular computer. You know, FLOPS is floating point operations per second. You notice the molecular computer wins by a large margin. And look at those watts. The energy used is much lower, so you have a lot more operations, much lower energy, so much higher flops per watt. That dollar figure is a projection of what it could eventually cost. In other words, it's not intrinsically expensive to do this. It doesn't have to be expensive. We all know the first one of any product is super expensive, right? The goal is, though, to get that down. So we're looking at, say, materials costs and manufacturing costs in the long run. And then look at the size. Instead of 720 square meters, I assume those are chip sizes. This is 0.003 cubic meters, so pretty small. So, and if any of you are interested, we have those are the citations. Those of you who love these kinds of things can dig in. So let's look at space. Here's one that I've always had trouble believing, and I'm going to tell this to you because I've been assured by my technical team that this is absolutely correct, okay? Right now, when we think of getting into space, we think of the picture on the left, right? Even today, that's how it looks. It takes a lot of mass to get into space. And part of that is because it takes a lot of fuel to get into space. So you need a lot of mass to lift all that fuel. But just like you can have vicious circles where more fuel means more mass, means more fuel means more mass, and the thing gets bigger and heavier, you can also, if you have strong materials, go the other way. Less mass, less fuel, less mass, less fuel, less mass, less fuel. If you get on this virtuous circle using advanced molecular nanotechnology, where does it take you for space transportation? Well, I've been assured many times that the amount of mass in terms of the vehicle it's going to take to get, say, 4 people and their luggage into space is the same as the mass on the right, which is about the amount of a heavy pickup truck today. So right now, we think of this as something, well, this is what you use just to get around on Earth. In the future, with really, really strong materials, this is the mass of the vehicle you would take to get you and your 3 buddies up into space with luggage. They always emphasize the luggage. It's very important. So that's our space application. All right. Now let's look at health. This is my favorite because if there's one thing I really don't like, it's aging. Really hate aging, okay? I don't want any of you to age. I don't want to age. Aging is awful. So what we want to do is get complete control of the structure of matter, including our own bodies, down to the molecular level. What would this look like? Well, here's something that's happening already. This is already happening. These are, it's called here nanoscale robots. In other words, there are nanoscale devices that go into the brain. In this experiment, not into the human brain. They're doing this in insects. But with the thought, only with their thoughts, apparently these insects can actually control what happens with these robots. This is sounding very science fiction-y, but those of you who've been around long enough know that that's reality. If you live long enough, reality becomes just like science fiction, okay? So just keep living and that's what'll happen. So these devices are mechanically actuated DNA origami robots tethered to metal nanoparticles. So if that's what we have today already, how long will it be before we can take and carry out major changes down at the molecular level using some kind of DNA robots? I know, wild, isn't it? You come talk to me after. I'm not allowed to answer questions right now. So, okay. All right, so aging. I said I hate aging. What's the problem with it? We have two people here. One of them is healthy and one of them is not healthy, right? What we want to do is apply molecular nanotechnology to fix this problem of aging. We heard already today from Aubrey de Grey, and he is looking at very near-term approaches, and I'm very much on his side on that. We need some immediate fixes, some short-term immediate fixes so that we can last long enough to have this longer-term technology help out. So how do we do this? The slow way is to do it the traditional Silicon Valley way with venture capital, because they want near-term products. And you can make near-term products, but if you do that, you're not looking at generalized technologies. You're not looking at the longer term and saying, how do we get a generalized technology that will take us all the way? You can see the goal is medical nanodevices over there on the right with the yellow arrow. So instead of the winding path, which is the traditional venture capital path, the goal is instead to go through the center, nanofactories, which is a general technology for control of molecules and atoms. And the goal then is you get much faster to medical nanodevices. That's it. I would love to talk more with you after. I understand there's a special room, and we can talk about nanotechnology, we can talk about open source software, we can talk about dating coaching, whatever you guys want to talk about, I'm up for. All right, thank you very much.